Hi, welcome to Culture Talk, an online program hosted by idigculture.com, a media channel where people gather to learn about other cultures around the world. Visit idigculture.com for more information, to view recorded shows, and to comment. This is the very first of many episodes to come, and today we're discussing net neutrality. Please introduce yourself, guests.
Hello, my name is Spider-Man, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Pleasure to be at your service.
Hello, my name is French Catwoman, and je suis très content d'être avec vous aujourd'hui.
Hey, 안녕하세요. 저는 Rocky입니다. Nice to meet you.
Excellent. Thank you all. Well, so as we mentioned before, we're discussing net neutrality. So let's go around and give a brief overview of net neutrality, what it is, what it means to you in your particular country. Spidey, would you like to lead us off?
Net neutrality means a lot to me because people like Jonah J. Jameson are trying to control the image of Spider-Man and describe him as a villain. But actually, Spider-Man is a person who's trying to defend the rights of the American public. And I think if we end net neutrality, superheroes like Spider-Man might get overtaken by villains like French Catwoman over here, who might want to end net neutrality. So to me, net neutrality is a really important thing. Freedom of expression.
Spider-Man, real quick, can you elaborate as to how somebody like French Catwoman might take over if without net neutrality?
Well, I have a friend, his name is Brian. He operates a website called idigculture.com, and he's doing his best to make the topic of culture something that's brought up in lots of discussions and social issues. And what I'm afraid of is that if large corporations or even government take over net neutrality, they could restrict the flow of information. And I think the internet, like the printing press a long time ago, is a tool to be used to spark social change. And that's what people like my friend Brian, who operates idigculture.com, is trying to do. So I'm worried about government institutions or private institutions trying to control the flow of information. That's what net neutrality means to me.
Thanks. Catwoman, would you like to comment?
Yeah.
I put you on the spot there.
You said I'm a villain, but I'm not a villain. I'm from France, so I can only agree upon, freedom of expression. That's something really important for us. We are the country of human rights, okay? But we just maybe don't think as idealistically as the Americans, right? So in fact, net neutrality in France is a bit different since, well, we're not afraid so much about private institutions. It's more about the government. Government is trying to control net and all the medias, and that's the main issue that we have in France and Europe in general right now.
So, Catwoman, just one quick question. When you're talking about government intrusion as the main issue for net neutrality as opposed to a private institution, what do you mean by that? Perhaps you may be familiar with the scandal plaguing the U.S. intelligence community, like the NSA and CIA, in regards to accusations of spying on the American people and even foreign leaders. Is that the type of thing that you're talking about? And if so, why aren't you concerned about private companies the way Spider-Man is?
Because the situation in France and Europe is a bit different. I'm also talking about Europe because you know that French laws are uh, also linked to European laws. It's both are interacted, in our rules. So it's we have a similar organization as you guys have, which is called National Digital Council. So they tried to take over net neutrality, saying that they needed money, right? So exactly the same situation as in US, but the European Parliament didn't let them do. Even if they tried to to lobby the net neutrality issue, they didn't succeed. So in fact, they voted a law to protect net neutrality. But they also put some exception in that law, and those exceptions were not for private institutions, but for governments. In some special cases, the governments have the right to control the flow, like fast lane, slow lane, and also to censor some part of the internet. So in fact, that's why we aren't so much afraid of private institutions, because in our law, we already protected net neutrality from that side. But the government still have power. And in fact, as we know that media and politics are, really close, that's why we are a bit concerned. And also because Netflix is trying to come in France and Europe. So they're trying to make things change.
All right, Rocky, let's hear your perspective.
Hey, listen, guys, I don't know why this net neutrality thing is such a big deal. In Korea, there's a lot of censorship, but we still got high-speed internet, and everything works out well. I don't know why y'all just so concerned about net neutrality. And plus, it's just an American thing. In Korea, it's not our problem.
You think it's not your problem? Does Korea have a fast and slow lane? As far as I know, they don't have that system. It's more just about censorship.
Exactly. So as long as you don't go onto restricted sites, you're fine. And a lot of people here, they get along just fine with all the internet access they have.
So Rocky, what kind of restricted sites are you referring to?
Porn.
Okay.
Is that it? So basically, you're saying that net neutrality is not something to care about, at least in Korea, because who cares if anything is censored as long as you have fast internet for the most popular sites? It's fine.
That's right. We have everything we need as long as you stay off the restricted sites like poker, gambling, porn. Then you're fine.
Don't you think?
What if you want to play poker? What if you want to gamble? What if you want to view porn? Is that not something that people should be able to do if they want to?
Well, it's illegal, isn't it? Gambling. In Korea, it's illegal to gamble. So.
At all?
Why be tempted to gamble in the first place? Even if you do, if you can get caught, you're gonna be sent to jail.
You can't gamble anywhere.
You shouldn't be on the sites anyway, in the first place.
No, really, you can't gamble anywhere in Korea.
There's one place called Gangwonland. That's the only place that's sanctioned for gambling.
But foreigners can gamble in Korea. That's the weird thing.
Yeah, there are casinos for foreigners that can gamble, but off limits to Koreans.
Where do you hold citizenship?
We agree that foreigners, they have their rights and their culture, and they can do whatever they want. But for our Korean people, we still want to control them and put them like more rules.
Interesting. So this brings us to a next level of questioning here. Net neutrality, is this an idealistic theme, or is this a real issue? Rocky seems to think that it's just some kind of strange American idealism and that it doesn't really have any impact. But Spider-Man seemed to have some pretty pointed accusations and end-of-world type scenarios that he suggested. So, Spider-Man, why don't you talk us a little bit through some of the dangers that you see, and try and convince us and convince Rocky why this is a real issue.
Yeah, I think Rocky is underestimating what impact the change of U.S. policy could have on the entire world. Um, Korea has a really developed internet culture, but still a lot of the IT culture is still based in the United States. So I think people from all over the world should really be paying attention to what's going on with the policy in America and should express their opinion. Even though they don't have any voting rights, the internet is a thing that affects the entire world. So I would hope that nationals of, I don't know if Catwoman would agree with me, but I would hope that nationals of many different countries would get involved even in the American politics.
See, that's just arrogant right there. You think just because this affects the U.S., it's going to affect the world. Yeah, the internet's all over the world, but that doesn't necessarily mean American internet culture just seeps all throughout internationally. That doesn't have much as of an impact as you think in Korea, because in Korea we have our own internet culture. Just because, sure, pop culture and everything on the internet from America and the IT culture is mostly based in America, yeah, that's true. But aside from technological differences, our culture is entirely different. And just because you think it's going to affect the U.S. doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have a deep impact in Korea or any other countries.
So let me jump in right here. When you're talking about internet culture, I'm curious as to how you relate that to net neutrality specifically, because a lot of the net neutrality argument, especially here in the United States, has to do with specific regulatory issues that the U.S. government puts into place or does not put into place. And it also touches on the physical infrastructure of the internet pipes, so to speak, and the various companies that provide content. Because they do work together. They do share some of the infrastructure. And some of the argument about why we need to really enforce net neutrality is because everything is becoming more and more integrated to the point where a lot of the largest private organizations can hold a lot of sway simply because they take up about 50% of the traffic. So when you say you don't think that the internet culture will spread, I'm wondering if you're taking into consideration simply the actors that view the content, or if you're thinking about the actual regulatory framework and its relationship with the private or multinational corporations.
Right. What Spotty is trying to argue is that if if America's internet is censored or slowed down, it has some kind of influence from the corporations that it's going to affect the world from their policies. What I'm saying is your FCC and Korea's KCC is entirely different. We have different laws, different rules about net neutrality and about internet itself.
I'm still proud to say that the country that Spidey defends right now is still a country of entrepreneurs, and it's the country of Google, Twitter, Facebook. All of those websites are based in America. So what I'm worried about is if the internet gets treated more like cable television, where you pay for packages. Right now we have millions of websites, millions of sources of information. If the internet gets treated like cable, we could be limited to only 100 different sources of information. And I don't agree. You can't treat countries as isolated entities anymore. America and China are both big countries, and their policies are important across the world. So even Americans should be concerned with what's going on in Korea and what's going on in France. We're all interconnected.
So let me jump in there and toss it to Catwoman here, because she was talking at the beginning about Netflix entering Europe, and she had some concerns about government intervention. So, Catwoman, how do you see U.S. policies affecting what's happening in Europe?
Yeah, it's a whole global network. In fact, the thing is, Netherlands 2 years ago passed a law trying to protect net neutrality, but it was really limited because as it's a whole global network and it's implying actors from all over the world, acting at the scale of a country isn't really efficient. So, in fact, that's why the European Parliament entered the game and voted a law for net neutrality. Because at the scale of Europe, at least we can do something. But we are, of course, afraid of Netflix entering Europe because, you know, they have a lot of power, like political power, financial power, and everything. So we're just afraid that they're gonna lobby all the politics in Europe and do the same thing as it's done in America. So in fact, we should care about what happens elsewhere, and we should care about what happens in our country. I think Korean Rocky didn't get that, and if he's not concerned about freedom of expression in his own country, he's just gonna end up like Chinese people.
Hey,
Wow.
don't compare us to the Chinese, okay? We're different.
If you don't care, well, that's what will happen to you.
She's got a good point. Earlier on, you didn't seem to be too concerned about censorship. You just said, who cares about censorship as long as you stay off the sites you're not supposed to go to and have fun and everything else, you should be fine, which frankly sounds very similar to you being behind the Great Chinese Firewall.
Yo, Rocky, what do you think about the Great Chinese Firewall?
Hey, that's China, and this is Korea, okay? Listen, the Chinese, they're communism, okay? In Korea, we have democracy, okay? We choose what we want, okay? We elect our officials, okay? We're not some Hong Kong protesting against some central government for our freedom. We have our freedom. We have the rights and the decisions we can make the decisions to do what we believe is to be right. And the entire point of censorship is not just because the governments feel like it's necessary. It's what the people want. It's what a lot of the 30, 40-year-old people concerned about their children. That's why we have censorship in place. It's not because the government has come up on its own to enforce these censorships. Okay, it's something that we as the people wanted, and that's the message we deliver to our representatives in office.
So, Rocky, let me ask you a question about the physical setup of the internet in Korea. Who owns the infrastructure and who regulates the speed and all of that? Is it government regulated, or is there a fair amount of private interest there?
Well, we have three big service providers, and that's SK, KT, and LG. Now, half of that is owned by SK, but sure. But there's also the government, because they make the laws, and then the providers have to abide by those laws. And at the moment, the service providers do have the right to determine the speed and and they are able to choose which apps they want to allow. But the thing is, what I want to talk about is, it would be bad for business if they try to separate it into slow lanes and fast lanes. That's kind of what's the issue going on in net neutrality in America. But even though we don't have as much of net neutrality as other countries like America or France, we still have the highest or the fastest internet in the world.
So you're saying
What, can I ask you a question? What uses the fast internet if you don't have choices. And what I mean choices is you mentioned that the internet providers can choose which websites can get seen and which websites can't get seen.
No, I did not say websites. I did not say websites.
It's kind of the Korean culture, you know, they have big cars, like really big cars, but if they only stay in Seoul, they cannot like use the power of this car, but they don't care. They just have a big car, they can show up with that. Is that like what you like about your internet? You can show off with the speed, but you cannot use it entirely.
Okay, tell me how I can't use my internet.
Okay, you talked about gambling, you talked about porn.
Yeah,
And you don't care so much.
you shouldn't be into porn or gambling. That's bad for you.
Okay, what about if you maybe we're kind of delving into this more censorship issue right now. But what if you disagree with what the government says about their policy,
Hmm.
but then they control the public's opinion by choosing what you can and can't see on the internet? Doesn't that take away one of the large merits of if you wanted filtered information, you could just watch TV.
Hey, Spidey, you got this echo thing going on. I can't understand you.
I got what going on?
A little echo, echo, echo. I can't hear you, so you're gonna have to speak again.
Spidey's having some trouble with his web.
Mm.
Your voice is echoing too.
Well, someone's speaker's too loud or something.
Can we adjust that? Apologies for technical issues.
Is Kevin's voice echoing too?
Everyone's voice is echoing.
Shoot. Okay.
Okay, so we don't know who's guilty.
All right, Catwoman's coming in loud and clear.
Hmm.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin. Continue.
All right, excellent. So, let's talk about the internet as a human right. Is it a human right? And to what extent can you use it as a human right? For instance, if it is, to Rocky, there are still limits as to how far you can take it because you don't have a right to view porn, you don't have a right to play poker, and you don't have a right to gamble on the internet because, as he says, you shouldn't. So is it a human right? And if so, where are the limits, if any? Catwoman? Are you there?
Oh,
Catwoman.
yeah, you're okay. Sorry, I didn't hear that you were addressing to me. Yeah, I think you're right because it's kind of the same as the phone. You know, where phone were invented, everybody agreed upon the fact that it's really useful and important to have phones. So they just said, okay, it's gonna be like gas or water, and people just gonna have to pay for it, but you don't have to pay extras or if you wanna talk more clearly or so that's kind of this is really a public utility. I think internet is really a public utility, and it's also because it's the first media I think from this century that might have the power and the potential of staying free, free of censorship and free of control by whether it is like public or private organization. And that's something that is really exciting because I really want to see if the internet can remain entirely free because it will be a huge, yeah, a huge step forward in the human rights for the world. Because actually, only 1/3 of the population, global population, is on the internet. There are still 2/3 of the population who don't even know what internet is, right? So, what are we gonna prepare for these people? Are they gonna know internet as we know it right now? Do we want to live them only like what is left? So like a shitty, censored, slow lane internet? Or do we want everybody in the world to have the same equal rights?
And I think depending on what happens in politics in America, I'm sorry if this sounds arrogant, but I'm worried about a domino effect. If that trend starts in America, I'm worried about a domino effect that could lead to the end of net neutrality in other countries. Because even like Catwoman said, other European countries tried to start policies regarding net neutrality, and it had very little effect. So that's what I'm worried about.
I'm going to step in really quick to address the technical issue. Can everyone please mute themselves when you're not talking? Thank you.
I think it might be Catwoman speakers because she's the only one that doesn't have an echo.
Well, could be, but at any rate, Spider-Man, talk a little bit about what Catwoman was mentioning in terms of the internet as a public utility. Is that the solution for the United States? And if so, how would that even be approached?
What do you mean, how would it even be approached? I mean, that's how we've approached internet for the last 10 years. And we've had so much innovation. So why can't we continue with the way we've been operating the internet thus far? Because it has been going very well. We have seen so much innovation in the last 10 years. Let's continue on with it. But, you know, in a capitalistic society, there's always countries, it's only natural that companies will want to seize the opportunity to make money. And they're not worried about social justice. They're just worried about making money. So, yeah, I'm sorry.
So in the United States, it's actually not a public utility. It's all privately run, and it's actually regulated as something relatively novel. If the FCC were to decide to regulate internet companies and the internet as a whole as a phone line or a phone company, the regulations would be much more significant. We probably wouldn't even have to have this conversation. But it's not regulated that way currently. So by public utility, I meant shifting how the regulatory schemes put into place view the internet providers, and also, do we make this a government-owned issue, or do we keep the private companies in control? Because after all, they've invested a lot of money and time building most of the infrastructure.
Yeah, so isn't it, the way I understand it, isn't it making sure that the private companies can't abuse their powers? That they can't make a fast lane for certain sites and a slow lane for other sites? Isn't that what we're trying to prevent them from doing? Because it's not about censorship like in Korea, just cutting off certain sites, but it's censoring things indirectly by making it so inconvenient to use certain services that you just cease to do it. So we should prevent them from doing that, right?
Well, let me take you back to the issue of utility. Are you saying that whether we view it as you get internet and you pay for it the way you would a water bill, or you get internet and you pay for it the way you would your gas? Are you saying that doesn't matter as long as we can just maintain proper regulation?
Yeah, many different countries are going to take their own approach to the internet, but it's the values surrounding the internet that I think are important. So whether it's treated like a utility or private company, in the hands of the private company. It's making sure that the people in control of the internet are forced to have values. So even companies that are profit motivated have to abide by certain moral standards, just like oil companies. They can't just they can't just pollute the earth. And just like car companies, they should submit to certain moral values because we're all sharing the same world in a globalized world.
Apologies, I forgot to unmute myself. I said that's a good place to leave it. Let's go around and everyone please mention one or two cultural overlaps or similarities or contradictions and differences that you've noticed between our three perspectives here. Rocky, why don't you lead it off?
Yeah, well, the entire discussion is about net neutrality, about how it should remain neutral. But in Korea, sure, we have many sites that are just that are free for people to access, and there are those that I mentioned before that are restricted. And what it sounds to me is that if net neutrality is is if there is no net neutrality in America anymore, then it'll end up somewhat similar to Korea. But what I want to point out is that even though we don't have access to some websites, illegal websites I should add, it's that we still have high-speed internet, and we can still access the majority of all the information we need. The websites that are blocked from us being able to access it are just the ones that are deemed not legal, lawfully in Korea. So everything else you can really get. So
how do you see that as specifically similar or dissimilar to the situations in France or the United States?
well, at the moment it's different from America and France. That's why it's different. It's different, and that's the reason why not many people in Korea or really anyone in Asia are really given a second thought about America's net neutrality.
Okay.
I've looked through all the websites, many websites, Korean, American, and sure, there's a lot of American websites and a lot of posts on Facebook from America saying, oh, we should fight net neutrality and all that, but I have never heard a single thing about net neutrality from Korean sites or from Korean Facebook.
Interesting. Catwoman?
Yeah, I agree with Rocky. It's kind of the same in France and Europe in general. We don't hear so much about net neutrality, and for us, it's really kind of a US issue. But we should definitely care about it because, I mean, it's a bit different in US because everything is about business, right? Everything is about free market rules and everything. So I think that's why they want to, yeah, they just want to let the free market to handle the internet and just like earn more money with it. The issue in Korea and France is more about the government control because we're not so much about business, right? But it's still an issue because in fact, business and government are so linked to each other, right? So if it's private companies owning the internet, they're gonna have politics behind them to continue the censorship. And if it's still politics, they're also gonna care a little bit about the money. Like if a big company just give them money, they're just gonna allow this company. So I think in both situations we're just losing freedom, which is really bad. But the main difference from the French perspective and French situation is that in America, people are really idealistic. They really want to have the total free internet, which is somehow impossible because perfection doesn't exist, right? And as in Korea, the good point of Rocky is that sometimes it's also kind of like global agreement of the people that something should be censored or something shouldn't exist, right? For example, what we have in France is that we already have this kind of fast lane, slow lane implemented by the government. Every video services which is not linked to French TV channels or French programs is slowed down because we want to promote our own culture. That's something that most of the French people agreed on, right? But we do not have as much censorship as in Korea because we also care about the limits of the censorship. That's why in the European law, they have a whole paragraph about the limits of the censorship. So it's like, we have exceptions, but we want to control the exceptions. So it might be a lot of papers, right? But our perspective is kind of in the middle.
So, Spider-Man, why don't you give us just a couple points? What do you think that we've learned as a group about net neutrality perspectives in the various countries?
I think one thing I could say is that even in cyberspace, culture manifests itself differently. So the way people use the internet is very different according to each country. So I guess I can understand, after hearing Rocky's perspective, I can understand why net neutrality might not be an important issue to him or other Koreans because of the way that they use the internet. So I think what I have drawn through this conversation is that cyberspace is also diverse, just like in real space. But if we want to have free information for everybody across the globe, we should consider how everybody uses the internet in their own unique and special way. So even though I don't use the internet in the same way that Catwoman or Rocky does, I should still have that knowledge of that. And I guess that's what I take away from this conversation that we had today.
Well, thanks for that, and that's where we're going to have to leave it because we're just about out of time. So again, this has been episode 1 of Culture Talk, an online program hosted by idigculture.com. Please visit the website to view more information, view recorded shows, comment, interact. Conversation's always happening at idigculture.com. Again, thanks for watching, and on behalf of Spider-Man, Catwoman, Rocky, myself, and all our alter egos, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Ciao.
Bye.
Au revoir.